All right. Hey, how's everybody doing tonight? Thanks for joining me. Gonna have a great live stream tonight. So fortunately, I reached out to Sherri and Mark a while back, and they were both nice enough to agree to come on, do the live stream, all of that. We'll kind of go over a little bit of the back history. We'll run through some of their whiskeys, things along those lines. But I'm really excited to have Mark and Sherri on tonight, just to be able to go over. And for anybody who's not somewhat familiar with Old Carter, or even if you are familiar with Old Carter, this will really give you a good understanding of the appreciation that they not only have for whiskey, but their passion, behind the whiskey and the brand. So rather than delay this any longer, let me bring on Mark and Sherri, and we'll get going. So they're the two people of the hour right now. So Mark, Sherri, thanks for joining tonight. I appreciate it.
The pleasure's all ours, Scott. Love you.
Good. So thanks again for joining tonight. So like I had said before, I just want to kind of start off a little bit before we dive right into the whiskey, is just give, I guess, everybody who may not be familiar with the brand and kind of how it all became. If you don't mind kind of just sharing a little bit of the story, kind of going back to the beginning of the hows and whys.
Yes. You want to start, Sherri, this time?
I know neither one of you are short-winded, so whatever one wants to go, that's good.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you, Scott, for reaching out, and we had a blast. The last time we did this was actually in the showroom in Lexington.
It was. Actually, the last time was in the lobby of the Seelbach Hotel.
Yes, that's right. Good one.
Yes. So.
So of course we can do a little run through on the.
Yeah. Just kind of the, going back to the beginning of, I know, before you even started the brand, what was going on to kind of just, what your thoughts were of why we wanted to start the brand and kind of go from there.
Honestly, you have to start.
Okay.
It starts way back.
And I'm not going to go all the way back to when I was just born in Eureka, California or anything like that. But
yeah.
I come from California, but my grandmother was from Somerset, Kentucky. And so we got roots here in Kentucky, and DNA of bourbon and whiskey is in my blood on one side of the family. And the other side is Italian, and the wine side is on DNA also. So I got in the restaurant and business and the hotel business back in 1982 and started a restaurant called the Carter House in Restaurant 301. And I got into the wine business because of the restaurant, and I love wine. And bought a winery, started a brand back in 98 was our first year in the wine business. And in 2006, we bought the winery in Napa Valley, and that went really well. And we were looking for some custom crush clients, and I talked to all my friends that were in the inn business. I said I could make some wine for them, and the only guy that took me up on it was a guy here in Kentucky, and that was Dixon Dedman. And Dixon wanted to make a little wine, and we talked about it. And then I said, well, I heard a story you guys used to make bourbon. And I said, why don't we make bourbon instead? And instead of doing the wine. And he said, we could do that. And I said, yeah, Dixon, we can do anything we set our minds to. And so we started a brand that they had many years ago called Kentucky Owl. And that went really well. And we loved it. And we met so many people in Kentucky that we really had a place in our heart for Kentucky. And that brand ended up selling. And we didn't want to finish, with what we started. We loved the bourbon industry and loved everybody in the bourbon industry. And so we started our own brand back in 2017. We started buying barrels and from different people, and also distilling in 2017. So we're coming on to 3-year-old, our new make, which we'll be able to release here in another maybe 2 years or so. And yet we're still getting great barrels from folks from Indiana, Tennessee, and Kentucky. And so Sherri can like tell a little bit more about, some of the why she liked it and wanted to continue in the spirits industry in Kentucky.
Well, so that was did that answer your kind of historic, step-by-step, Scott?
It does. It does. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Good. Well, additionally, I can add that we just really, truly fell in love with the process of putting bourbons together. And I don't know how many folks out there know, but I'm the designer. I do all the package design. I did all the package design for the first brand. And and then, we build all these blends together. But this, how do I put it? Bourbon became I don't have any actual children, so I like to say that I give birth like 2,500 times at a time. When we put a new batch out, yeah, it's painful. It's painful stuff. But it's worth it. And so, we're just very everything that we do, everything about the brand is very close to our hearts.
It's just the two of us. There is nobody else. So
we pick every barrel, we do every blend.
We blend together, every batch.
And I'm still handwriting all the labels for the information on the bottom of the labels. So.
And that's amazing. I know as you continue to put out these batches and there's more and more bottles, that's awful lot of writing, I'll tell you.
It's a lot of writing, but I love it. I kind of get in my zone, and I have to kick Mark out of the house when I do it because
if I start talking, then she messes
I
up the
mess
label.
up my numbers, and he drives me nuts. So, but he's great. He rolls them up. That's good. I don't like rolling them up, so that's what he does. But yeah, we're very involved in all aspects of it, and we're distilling here in the state of Kentucky too. So in addition to purchasing aged whiskeys, we also are distilling with a couple local distilleries that are here in the state.
All right, that's interesting. That's kind of newer news to me. I didn't realize you were doing any of your own distillate now.
I've been doing that since the beginning.
Oh, you have? Okay, I didn't know that. That's very, very interesting.
And different mash bills, we love trying. We've got some rye, we've got some 4 grains,
we've got some fun stuff coming on.
We've got some just wheaters even. So we love different. What we even with the first brand, we never wanted to make the same thing really twice. Anything we saw that was really great, that we loved, that we could put our stamp on, that we were really behind it, that just kind of made us warm and fuzzy inside every time we taste it. That's the kind of stuff we want to make. It's kind of like wine for us. Wine every year and every vintage is a different uniqueness to it. And we're very passionate about the vintage each year. Some years are better than others. The weather, you're up to Mother Nature usually when it comes to grapes, and that's where we have to take care of the crop each year, and it makes a difference. But we can still blend and use different barrels, and all those things came into play when we started, actually blending and making different. Blends and char barrels and all the uniqueness that we love with wine, we get to do also with bourbon and rye and whiskeys.
Yeah, but wine is so much more frustrating. I love the fact that we can blend whiskey and work with whiskey when kind of we so choose to do so. Wine is a crop, and you deal with
one day a year. You get to pick the perfect time and make wine. And there's a lot of things can happen, weather, all kinds of things,
wildfires,
national disasters.
it's so fun.
So,
yeah. Well, that was the thing. Like early on, after meeting you guys, even the first time, the thing that really kind of drew me to you was obviously kind of your love for life, and then you quickly realized the passion that you had. Not only just for the bourbon, which I kind of learned pretty quickly, but a lot of everything that you've done, the passion behind it. And I think for me and a lot of people who are watching or will watch this on the replay, I think they'll agree. I think they sense that passion behind it, and that it's translated, into the whiskey, specifically. So, and I think anytime people put all of that, into a product, it's very reflective of that. So, kudos to you guys for really putting out such a fantastic whiskey. So
thank you, Scott.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Appreciate
Thank you. It definitely helps that we get along very well, and I may be like completely crazy, but even in these times, I keep saying, Mark, you need to spend more time with me.
more time. Hey, I didn't realize it was more than 24/7.
Can't go to bed yet. I have to talk to you.
I have to talk to you.
Talking to you for 18 now.
No, that's good. Well, and again, that is, the passion behind it and all of that, to me, again, it's just what I think it's what keeps everything fresh and everybody wanting everything. And each batch is always different. And I know, just talking with other people, how much they appreciate the subtle differences and what it is that you guys do. I guess to kind of go through maybe some of the process a little bit, if you don't mind, like, what do you kind of go through when the time comes to start, selecting barrels for your blend or your batching or whatever it may be, versus like any single barrels? How does that whole process work for you guys?
Well, one of us takes a lot of notes.
Yeah, thank goodness Sherri knows how to write. It's really not a real strong suit for me, is writing, but so she takes great notes. And we will pull, when we said, well, it's probably the time we should do the rye earlier in the spring, and bourbon's usually in the fall. But we'll pull as
we're pulling samples though all the time
to
see where barrels are at.
Yeah, because they're going to be changing, as the months go along. And so we pull samples out of as many as 50 barrels. Like right now, we have 50 single barrels that we're tasting through to see if which ones would actually become a single barrel.
Those are the Kentucky straight bourbon.
Yes, which will be coming, probably trying to get those bottled around August. But for if it's the rye, we'll pull 20, 30 barrels, taste through them. Now, all our batches are usually between anywhere from 5 to maybe 13 barrels. It's all. But we may taste through as many as 30, 40 barrels and narrow it down to what we like. And it's so unique, because you may love, these barrels and try to blend them together, and even two barrels that you love, you blend them together and they actually counteract and kind of make it a neutral and doesn't bring anything to the table, And so sometimes two barrels that are totally different and unique and maybe not the best barrels make a great barrel. So
it's a whole lot of trial and error.
It really is.
And then when we hit on something that we love and all of our hair stands up on our arms and all around,
we feel that we're on the right path at that point.
That's a very good sign. And if it happens to both of us at the same time, then that is really a good time to stop. Except one of us can't stop.
Sherri, he will exhaust all, if we had 50 barrels and we're trying to only blend 10 of them, she would try all 50 combinations, which would almost maybe be 1 million different combinations, but she will try all of those. And I get a little bit more where I go, that's really good. I think I'm really happy with that, but in the middle of the night, she'll get up and bring me one more and say, here, try this. I said, honey, it's 4 o'clock in the morning.
So I'll say, you want to speak up?
I said, yes, I do.
Well, and that goes back to the passion. Somebody who is not passionate about what they're doing and passionate about the product that they're producing and selling to the customers, you wouldn't do that if there wasn't that behind it. So, I think all of us who enjoy and love Old Carter brand and the whiskeys, I think we all say thank you for having that passion, in it, because it clearly translates from that, into the bottle. So
I'm glad that you feel that way, because we work our tails off, and
You know, when we
and we love it.
And when we send something out, we know that we can stand behind it, and it's unique and it's wonderful, and we love it. And hopefully, other people. And we make so little that there'll be hopefully enough people that love it also that buy it and support it.
We were asked a question the other night on a call. You know, because some of our expressions are non-traditional. Okay, so some of them may not taste like every rye on the market or every bourbon on the market. And they said, "Are you know, does that give you pause, or do you think that's okay?" And it was an interesting question, and I answered it as, it's interesting because we create whiskeys that we love, and we certainly hope other people like them. But I know that they are out of the box a little bit in flavor profile sometimes. But we feel like if they hit the levels of, and the quality is of absolute importance. So, you know, everything we do has to be just excellent in our opinions. And so if it hits that excellent level and it fires on all cylinders and it makes our hair stand up, then that ends up being the blend. And sometimes that may not be just like every other bourbon out there, and that's okay with us.
Yeah, which I think, I mean, to be honest, I mean, I think a lot of people, when they're starting to get into this category, I think that's a little bit more of what they're kind of looking for. I don't think they always want just, you know, the normal type of bourbon profile. That when they're spending, you know, their good money on a bottle of this, I think they already know that they're going to be getting something different and unique. And even though it's not necessarily like some of these, a single barrel and it's a batch, they know that it's already going to be something different, unique, you know, flavorful. I mean, your process, and again, you can go through what you do with the whiskeys and all of that. But I think it kind of comes back to that process. And then let me ask you this: what do you do when you get to that point where you're both very adamant or opinionated of liking something versus the other? How do you kind of get through, like, I really like this and think this may be it, versus, I mean,
arm wrestle. No, that's.
I mean, since it's only you two, you guys are just doing, between you two, you're tasting and blending, and that's it.
It's just us, and that is an excellent question. And so I don't know, you know, traditionally, all of our batches except for the ryes, we have blended everything together, and we come to a consensus and we decide on something and give it our blessing as a couple. Our ryes, on the other hand, we each blend our own rye, and we've been doing that by accident from the beginning. Because our first release that we ever did was rye, and we came up with 2 ryes, and Mark can tell you the story. But when we're blending and we come up with something, and you want one thing and I want another thing, I usually win. I'm kidding.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anybody who's married kind of understands that. So I would agree with that.
I was joking. Honestly, we go around and around and around again, and then I'll reblend it, and we'll taste it blind, and then we have to come to an agreement. I mean,
you know, and then I think we both bring something to the table.
Yeah.
I think, you know, Sherri's probably has her nose is, you know, her aromatics, and she's probably way more sensitive than I am. I like mouthfeel, and so. But with the two of us, mouthfeel deep, rich, she does too. And by the time we get all around to, you know, doing the blending and coming up with something, we both will go, yeah, that really works for both of us,
yes.
You know.
And it's very cool too when we're tasting like just single barrels, like something, I'll fall in love with something and I won't say anything, or like it'll hit me and it's like, wow, that's a really great barrel. And he'll say, this is a really great barrel. So, you know, so there's a lot of, we have very similar like standards as far as quality and flavor and what's going on in there. We may both be drawn to different profiles on some level, but it's really all about, it's really a quality thing. It's
and
really,
I think you'll see it on all of the, you know, the ryes, the bourbons, or the American whiskey that we do. there's always going to be that richness, that depth, that, sweetness, that finish, the long finish. Those are the things we're looking for.
And of course, as we're blending barrel strength, everything's barrel strength.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know that everything we've ever done has been barrel strength.
Yeah.
From the very beginning of the first brand to today, we've always felt that when you bring a product to market, this is what we like. Now, doesn't say, you can put ice in it, you can do anything you want with it after you get it, but we're trying to give you the biggest flavor that you can possibly get right off the get-go, and then you can take it from there, and that's, a lot of people don't understand. I don't think still at this point, they're starting to, more and more people are. It's very expensive to do barrel proof, than just doing a bourbon that's at 90 proof or even 100 proof. So that's one of the reasons what we do is more expensive than a lot of things out there.
Yeah. And that is, that allows, not only non-chill filtered, barrel strength. It's basically probably sifted and then into the bottle. And then that allows anybody who wants to maybe proof it down or change it or whatever, let them do that part of it on their own. So
we do no chill filtering at all.
Exactly.
And so, it's just, get the chunks out.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've got a question here. There were a couple other ones I saw pop in too. So Christopher David, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it. It says, Mark and Sherri, can you talk a little bit about the whiskeys blended into the American whiskeys? And do you have a go-to formula? Keep the great whiskeys coming.
That's very nice.
Thank you, Christopher.
Yeah.
So the American whiskey has been so fun to create.
And it was a surprise when we first did it at the very beginning.
Well, we knew that we wanted to create, we knew we wanted to do an American whiskey. And we were lucky enough to get the barrels that we got, which are.
And they have quite a bit of age on them. They usually say 12 years on them.
But this
really
batch 3 is almost half 15 year old.
Almost 14 to 15 year olds old now. And so it's not,
but it also has 12 year in it.
Yeah. And we like to blend some of that together sometimes too.
It's very fun to work with. And I have been, to me, that's the one that shows continuity among batches. And I think you guys might find that too.
Very high proof. It's, I think the lowest one was 134. Then we went 139, and now we're 138. So
and it does not drink that hot at all. That's one thing I'll say about all the American whiskeys is that as high a proof as they are, I know a lot of people get kind of crazy about using the term smooth or whatever, but it is that. You sip it and you're kind of anticipating that like burn, but it never really comes to that point. You still get a little bit of that hug and everything that's there, but it's absolutely, fantastic. Let me ask you this one thing, because I get people asking me this all the time. Can you explain to people, and I'll reference back to this, so when people ask me again, I'll tell them to go back and watch this. Can you explain why it's American whiskey and not bourbon?
You want to take that one?
It was not put into new barrels. So it's a very high corn mash bill. So it was put into used barrels, and it went in at a higher proof than bourbon is allowed entered in.
Okay.
So it was, and when we tasted it, so we have to tell this one. So, so the 27 year is also the same American whiskey, just a much older American whiskey. So when we get samples from our supplier, sometimes Mark just hands me stuff and says, taste this. And I'll ask him, what is it? And, Mark says, I'm not telling you, just taste it. Well, that happened with the 27 year. And I was washing the dishes one afternoon, and he came in and he said, taste this. I tasted it. What is it? I'm not telling you. And I said, okay. And I tasted it. And I said, I don't care what it is, but I want it. Well, it ended up being the older sister of our 12-year American. That is just, I don't know. it's been a favorite.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard not to. I mean, I would say for a lot of people, especially me, I love the big, bold richness. I mean, it has for me, and probably I think for a lot of other people, like everything that you want, like in a whiskey that you know it's going to be all of that, and it hits like every single one of those points. I mean, I love it, and I know a lot of other people love it as well. So.
Good. I'm glad you do. We love it.
Yeah. It's Sherri's favorite now.
I had it last night with Mark's birthday cake.
Yeah. It's been really.
I can see that would be a fantastic one to have with it. So
he had bourbon. You had bourbon 5.
Yeah.
Yep. And I had American 3. What are you gonna do?
You both are. That's right there. 1A and 1A. There's no missing there. Those are both fantastic. So. All right, so I got one more question here from Jason, the Mash and Drum. You guys have met Jason before, so he was with us when we were at the Seelbach as well. So, Jason says, "Cheers, Mark and Sherri. Wanted to know if you guys are still choosing barrels with different flavor profiles, or are your palates starting to line up?"
I think that well, it's been a good experiment because. Well, how do I want to put this?
Well, I think, we'll taste all through lots of different samples of different barrels from different, if it's Indiana or Tennessee or Kentucky, we'll taste all kinds of things. But I think
95% of the time, we love the same barrel.
Yes, we do. We will go, oh, that's really good, or that's
this
not
needs more time.
Yeah, this is not going to work at all right now. So
it's a qualitative thing.
Yeah, and that's that richness, that sweetness. So maybe we do line up again. Like I say, Sherri, we'll look a little bit more at the aromatics because I think her nose is more sensitive than mine. But and all those things are important. And I think as you keep tasting different bourbons, rye, and whiskeys. You start seeing what you like about those whiskeys, no matter whose they are.
Always surprise you.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and it's been fun, like jumping back into doing single barrel tastings for a single barrel expression, because to me, that's the ultimate test, because we want our single barrel products to have as many nuances as our blends do, which is difficult. And so it's really,
we want them to be complex too, and that's the thing. Just like our blends.
Yeah. So when we're tasting those together, we're not putting anything with it. So it's either going to pass or not.
Yeah.
And so that's a great. That's been a great way for for us to sit down together and come together on barrels. So in answer to that specific question, because normally we just, we like what we like, but for the single barrels, we better both love it.
Yeah.
It's not going in a bottle.
Well, and that's important, obviously. So, so I heard before, are you guys planning on starting to name some of the batches, or some of the I mean, probably not the single barrels, but the batches and things to maybe kind of put a little extra spin on it?
Well, we've done, I was counting the other day, and I think it was 38 different, offerings we've done so far in the last, 2 years, roughly. And, it's, all the bottles look very similar. So we started talking about, naming them, and even these, we've named them ourselves. We just haven't put a name on the bottle. Yeah.
Ghost Pepper Brownie
or Bourbon Sauce. Because it was just, we weren't thinking about doing a bourbon. No. We were supposed to do rye, and we ended up doing the bourbons first before we released the ryes and blended the ryes. This year, and we just tasted these barrels. Actually, and they started really singing to us, both the high, rye, which is a 21% rye mash bill, mash 4. So it's very unusual, and it has a little higher notes than most of our bourbons, but we again fell in love with it. and then the batch 5, which was that dark brooding,
Oh, it's so good, and we'll get into that stuff pretty soon. Like it's like right under my nose. I'm just smelling like everything right now. So
I would like to actually ask a question. So we in Mark actually sitting down and doing all the math, that realizing that we have done 38 expressions. As a package designer, I'm always looking at, is the package, have as much information on it that it needs, but that, so that I'm always analyzing the packaging.
yeah.
So one thing that we have been discussing, and
Yes.
it would be good to get
Some input
from everybody. The fact that when you put 38 expressions up on a shelf and they all look the same,
very similar.
We're thinking that it might be time to, very small, we're not radically changing anything. I love the label, and the history of the label is deep. That's a woodcut of a horse that I did 20 years ago, and was the first piece of artwork that Mark bought from me. So that's never going to change. But we're thinking about tweaking a little bit of the color on the tax tag, that strip stamp that's over the top.
Oh yeah.
To be the same color if it's okay. Which 3 bottles do you have there, Scott?
So one of them is, this was actually a bottle that you guys gave me when it was like basically empty for the most part, and it's just refilled up because my wife loves the bottle so much. So it's basically decoration, partially in the man cave a little bit.
Good.
But, and this was batch 4. We actually had this one at the Seelbach. That's what that is.
Is that the rye?
That's the rye, correct?
Okay.
And then this one is, this is batch 2 of the rye, and this is batch 1 of the American whiskey.
Okay. So on those labels, there's a very subtle difference. I don't even know if you can tell it, but the borders are green and blue. The bourbon is black. So there you go. See, you've been drinking this for a while. So this is one of the things that we're playing around with. So the rye's got green, the American has blue, and the bourbon is black.
At least the Americans all have been 12 years old.
So
We
they
have the little neck
collar.
collar
But
on there.
so now we're thinking of doing the strip over the top, green, blue, or black.
Yeah.
And also the area behind the actual product name, so where it says rye, bourbon, or American, in that box, changing that color. So that's the only changes we're thinking of, but that's the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night.
Well, that's okay. I mean, that's that's a lot of what your colors that you've got in the brand. I guess one thing I would maybe, and I don't know if this is even doable or would not be a solution or whatever, but what about like introducing like this tax strip? And I guess people in the comments can leave too. What about, and again, I don't know the logistics part of it, but what about for the ryes, this being like green with some of your other colors, and then maybe the bourbon be like red, and then something else be the yellow.
That's what we're talking about. Though that exact piece of label would be green, blue, or black.
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be. I think people would be drawn to the different colors. Especially if they were looking at all 3 of these lined up and they weren't looking for bourbon, American, or rye. That they could always just see that the black is bourbon, whatever whatever the other stuff may be.
That's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
Trying to make it a little easier to actually
the
know if
different
it's a rye or if it's a bourbon or
Yes.
American whiskey when you go into a shop. And also the thing is that, a new batch comes out and, you really have to look at it very closely to see if it's a higher number. And
Well, Joseph, thanks for the super chat. I appreciate it. Yeah, Joseph said, finally got to try some Old Carter. Their palates and blending skills are legit. So there's another person. So
thank you, Joseph, very much.
And I know a lot of the guys that are in the chat tonight there's some people I've met in here, some haven't, but just in associating with some of them, you start to learn some of their palates and what they like. And you get a lot of really good feedback on really all of your stuff. So, I mean, kudos to you on that. So, all right, why don't we we're already almost 35 minutes in. We haven't even touched the whiskey at all yet. So, this is hard. I had to get a few of the other things out of the way before I could really get into some of the fun stuff. So, do you want to start? So I've got basically batch 4 and 5 of the bourbons. I've got batch 5 and 6 of the rye and batch 3 of the American whiskey. So I guess so that people are really kind of hearing from the horse's mouth.
Yep.
Bump.
Okay.
I had to throw that in there. I had to throw a little horse analogy in there for you. So
I like that. Always.
Yeah. So I guess, so let's start with, so this is going to be batch 4, and this is coming in at 116.8 proof. And again, this is batch 4. And when was this released? When did you release this?
Well, this was released. So this spring has been a little nutty with release schedules.
February.
This was released here in Kentucky in late February, early March. But made its way to California a little later and DC a little later.
We're in 3 markets is all we're in. We started in Kentucky. We'll always be in Kentucky, but we went to California and to Middle Atlantic. So those are the places you can actually find Old Carter at.
Okay. Yeah, when I was kind of starting to nose like batch 4, I mean, right away with everything, you always get just that richness. There's just that refined, bold richness that you get from all of this stuff right away. But I had in some of my tasting notes, and I know everybody will be really interested, because I know people, based on these live streams and things, people are waiting to hear like your specific feedback so that they can align it with their palates. And I know people will go out and buy these things based on those. So I think for me, it's important to allow people to hear from you guys what it is that you kind of nose and taste. Well,
this is, first of all, I want to preface this by saying that we did not intend to release 2 bourbons this spring. So it's interesting because when we released the 2 ryes together, people taste them side by side and they compare and contrast. And that's been kind of a good, fun party game, because, one's mine and one's Mark. And so, but with the bourbons, it was when Mark said batch 5 is called Bourbon Surprise, it's called Bourbon Surprise because we tasted the barrels only because I pulled samples. We were not intending to blend it. And they were so good and so ready to go, we did it.
Yeah.
And so batch 4 was what we intended to release this spring. So we felt we wanted to, and we had never released a bourbon in the spring. But with these newer markets that we've got, we wanted to bring some more product on board. And with us, it's way more, how do I put this? We are never going to make, we're not going to make batches that have 30,000 bottles in them. So we're going to make small batch. So if that means making 2 small batches and then having enough to go around, that's what we're going to do. And so in talking with the distributors, does this sound good to you guys? The barrels were ready. And so we went, heck, we're going to do 2 bourbons in the spring. And so this was the intended spring bourbon.
Yep.
And I wanted to create a lighter profile.
Yeah.
And seasonal bourbon.
A little higher, like almost going into that, into spring.
Yeah. So this is a high rye mash bill. And this, I love this bourbon, batch 4. It's got these incredible, definitely you can taste the rye presence. Yeah. Absolutely.
I like the length on this, because it's a little higher, it gives me a chill when I drink this. I love batch 5, but this one here just warms me up, and
it's still round and
it's got that sweetness to it, on the palate. You can taste that sugar.
Mm-hmm.
It's not dark and brooding, but it's the light and and high notes that will also sometimes, like with the wine.
Lively.
It's lively. It's got almost like with wine, acidity that just keeps going, and the finish continues and continues.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting that you say that, because in my notes, I've got that there's this effervescence to it. It's like, it's very like bright and like almost like sparkly, like refreshing. But then I had, like, shortly after I got that, and this is something I get once in a while on a little bit richer stuff, but I even had like coffee and chocolate notes a little bit. There was this like light espresso something that was there on it to me.
I would go there with you.
Yeah. Good cinnamon, still some of that like light dark cherry.
Mm-hmm.
More fruit, like you say, with the 4.
Yeah. This is what I would say. I mean, with 4, it's a really complex, still high proof bourbon that drinks like really, really nicely.
Yeah. I get a lot of citrus.
Yeah.
That bright.
Yeah,
it's that note, it's up there.
Yeah. And maybe, and I can see where where you say that. And it's maybe like almost like with that citrus, like more of a, not necessarily like a lemony, but it's like that freshness you get from lemon, I think, more for me.
Like almost like pull a piece of orange peel off the peeler and do a twist.
Yeah. And it could be that. And I mean, that the finish is great. It's that warming cinnamon, spicy sweetness. It's all. And
it comes back around to caramel, but it's a light caramel.
Yeah.
You like
it's there.
Caramel smoothness.
It's there, but it's not
that sugar, dominant. A light caramel.
It's not dominant.
Yeah. It's a really nice one. I still get some of that coffee chocolate like on the back end a little bit for me on this one.
Yeah.
It's interesting. All right. I've already pre-tasted these for all you guys. I know Mark and Sherri already knew that I've kind of tasted some of these, but I'm super excited to get to number 5. This is a big boy / big girl bourbon right here for you. All right. So a little bit of information on batch 5. So this was,
Bourbon surprise.
Yep. It's definitely that. So this came in at 115.1 proof. Again, non-chill filtered, barrel proof, all of the goodness that we all want. So
people really care about age. It's kind of interesting. We have stuff that's, pretty old, 27 years old, but we have stuff. This is about approaching 7 years, most of these.
No, this is actually over 7.
Yeah. So,
and 4 is 7 and a couple younger barrels.
Yeah. So if you care,
and that makes total sense when you taste them.
And they're both Indiana. It says on the back. We try to be, as transparent as possible. You help say everything. You just look at the back of the label. You should be able to figure out what stuff comes from.
So are you saying that the whiskey in this is only upwards of 7 years old?
In 5?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in 5.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Really? I would have, if I was tasting this blind and the boldness and richness of this would have already been like, I think I would have started. It'd be really interesting to hear anybody's thoughts in the chat. If they've had batch 5, I would have started out at a minimum of 10 years, maybe even upwards of 12 years. The boldness that this has, it is fantastic. I mean, it's an incredible bourbon. And for me, 4 and 5, they're kind of night and day. Like
they should be.
I mean, it's
totally different mash bills. And so the story on this 5 was that we had, 9 barrels of it?
Yes.
Okay. So we had 9 barrels of it. And we were not, like we said, we were not intending on creating a blend this spring. And we tasted it and we looked at each other and we're like, this needs to be in the bottle right now.
Yeah.
And you said it drinks like it's a lot older.
Yeah.
So it was like, this is good. Like it's ready. And so we started blending and, we had 7 of the 9 barrels blended and they were all, by the way, completely different.
Yeah.
As barrels are, same mash bill, same age, like same everything and all different. And so we did several combinations of them, landed on the idea that we wanted an 8-barrel blend. out of the 9, right? So we're going to leave 1 barrel out.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't decide which barrel.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. And so that turned into a several week conversation and a lot of Sherri blending and reblending and trying, every single, leave this one out, leave this one out. And then finally at the very end, I blended again. Like literally we had to go down and put the batch together. We were on the schedule and I'm still going crazy we were down to 2. We put this one in.
This is this is kind of a crazy story. So we're going to
I don't know if you want to tell her going to
to the bottling facility where we're going to bottle it, and we're still blending. I'm driving the car, and she's still passing stuff over to me to taste, and I'm going back and forth.
Don't talk about
that. You were parked.
Yes.
Pulled over and we did that.
I was spitting though.
Okay.
So basically when it comes down to it, we are blending until the last second and still it's just, but here you go.
And
so,
most of the time we're splitting hairs at the very end.
We are.
Although they're both great. At this point they're both great.
But the 2 barrels that we were working with, they were very different.
Very unique.
And I will say the one that we landed on was the barrel that was created a bigger profile. And we were like, that's it. We're going with this one. And
so that literally that 1 barrel was kind of what put batch 5 kind of over the top then.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
That's crazy that this is only upwards of 7 years. To get that richness and boldness, I guess at the end of the day, that goes back to you and your blending and your palates and putting this kind of thing together, because to have something that tastes like this and by no means is 7 years young, but to have something 7 years taste like it's 10, 12 upwards, 10 or 12 years, that's pretty darn impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You love it. I'm glad you like it.
This one for me was I had notes of, I've got this bold, allspice, this sweet, fresh oak, a big, bold, rich vanilla.
A lot of vanilla. Yep.
Big, bold, brown sugars, all of that kind of stuff.
Sugar, char,
caramelized sugar for days. Yeah. This one, it had so much it's creme brulee.
Yeah, definitely. And I've got that. I've got creme brulee written down, and it's that bold, rich, intense, sweet, big, and bold. It's fantastic.
It is sweet.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a fun one.
Yeah.
I'm glad you like it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I do like something at times when it's bold like this, when it has a little bit of that leather to it with a little dryness to it. So
I do too, because then that gives you that age that we like some of that, not too much. You don't want to go that
right.
Too much leather, kind of oxidized.
I think
you get none of that with this, but you get it seems older than it is, which is, I think, really a wonderful note.
And both of these bourbons were distilled in Indiana, for the record.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you said before batch 4 and 5 are different mash bills. So 4 was what was the rye in 4?
21%.
Yeah, it's up there.
And is this the 36%er?
This
is a big corn.
Big corn.
Oh, this is a big corn. Okay.
Corn.
Okay, big corn. Big corn. Okay, interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, but both Indiana. I think somebody's asking about Tennessee, but
and we do have Tennessee, and actually, the batch 3 bourbon is Tennessee. And that was a 15-year-old.
Yeah, that's
okay.
15-year-old.
Yeah.
Have you gotten any pushback at all from using or blending Tennessee whiskeys just because they have a little bit of a unique or different profile to it?
I think it's barrel to barrel too, and
is.
people haven't figured that out yet. I don't think.
Okay.
Really wonderful Tennessee, you know, and then we've seen some that we
Not so wonderful.
that need more time or more work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, some people love it, some people don't. Some people like that style.
You know what? Too, I think, and maybe this is just us because everything we blend, I feel, is like really unique, and in it's maybe different than what else is, you know, going out there or whatever. But when people know where it's distilled from before they taste it, I think they already have a preconceived idea or an opinion, which is fine. Except that maybe there are things out there that are different that they haven't tried before, and you know, so it's we just really stand behind the fact that whatever we do, if we don't, we'll never put anything out that we aren't like 1,000% behind.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we feel very passionate about everything we've put out. And yes, our first bourbons were Tennessee.
Yeah.
And
one of the things we've never done, and just to get that out there, is that we've never blended anything from you know, different states into a blend that we've done. We've always kept the mash bills the same, you know, and the origin from what state it was the same.
Yeah.
So, you know, just to keep it really simple, clean, and all that, you know, so not confuse anybody. You know, we never,
everything is straight whiskey.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
straight whiskey.
That's what we want to do.
Joseph was asking before, he said he was in Kentucky last June. Old Carter was everywhere. Has that changed? Is it still out? Can we still find it?
Well, you know, I think
so.
We're always releasing something. So there's always something in the market, and should be. You may not find, you know, something that was last year. You know, we want to be on the shelves always a little bit, so people can pick things up.
Yeah.
You know? So, you know, we try to, you know, like every other month have, you know, really something released.
Well, now that we do have these other states that we are fulfilling, there is a little bit less that's being released in Kentucky. So, but we're trying to do more batches over time to kind of make up for that volume. So that's kind of our that's the vision.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to be able to go into a place now and be able to find something that, you know, is such a fantastic bourbon that, you know, because nowadays with all the allocations of things, and I know some people get it, some people obviously don't, but to be able to go in and still get your hands on something that's this good is nice, because there's so many whiskeys that everybody chases after nowadays that, I mean, really, you don't have to look very far outside of like whatever state you're from. If that's there, it's kind of a no-brainer. It's kind of a buy with all of it. And I think people enjoy, they know they're going to get something a little bit unique and different, which is kind of exciting at the same time. So
good. So one thing I do know is that they did not release the rye 5 or 6 here in Kentucky.
Yeah.
It's going to be released the first week of June, and the same in California.
Okay, so 5 and 6 have not been released yet.
But they have been let go up in DC. So there's folks up in that area that got their hands on.
DC was such a smaller market that they got all their
all of the spring releases at once, and they distributed it.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. All right, so we're getting a little bit of a sneak peek on 4 and 5 here for everybody. So, all right. Well, this will be interesting, because I think with rye whiskey, this can be all over the board for people. Like that's one thing outside of like bourbon and American whiskey. When you ask people what it is they like or don't like about rye, it's all over the place. It's really kind of an interesting whiskey that it keeps a lot of good conversations going as to why people like it and why they don't. So I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on batch 4 and 5 and what you get and what you like, you know, on both of those.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah, you started.
So I think rye is so interesting because for us, I love working with bourbon, but for me, you know, I feel like rye has all of these possibilities. It's kind of the Wild West, you know, and so I love the directions it can go in.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see from the two samples that you've got, these are two very different directions. And, you know, one is rich and deep and dark and brooding, and one is the opposite of that. And I love that. And yet they both contain the integrity of the rye flavor profile.
Yeah, you always get that spice.
Yeah.
The rye, which I love. You get that, you know, kind of baked goods. You get, I think, more complexity sometimes.
Yes, I love the complexity of rye.
Of
and I love working with blending rye, and the barrels that we've been able to play around with have given us some of the most incredible diversity. It's just been really fun. I love it. And so this first one, I mean, this is the
good long finished sweet.
And just so everybody knows, so batch 5 of the rye, this is 115.5 proof. Yeah, and again, this is another like bright rye. Like you get this like nice like herbalness. There's this like herbal, like a maybe like a black tea or something that's there on this.
So
kind of dry, you know, herbs.
And also,
tea,
I get
tea.
a ton of like dark notes of. Okay, so for me, like an herbal dark note is like black licorice.
Yeah, it could be exactly could be that. Yep.
So it's there's a sweetness to it, but it's an herbaceous sweetness.
Yeah.
It's not like creme brulee. No, but this also has like this. There is a little bit of like weird like toffee, and I do get coffee. This one is super chocolatey.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. This one, in blending this one, was
Did you say like a root beer before? Because I get this like root beer aspect to it a little bit.
There's root beer.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other night in one of our
Yeah.
Borehound. So the other night in one of our things we were doing, we were tasting those single barrels, and it was a much brighter root beer profile, which, you know, basically, you know, it was like a sassafras for me, you know, a sassafras, which is very specific, you know, which goes back to your tasting palette is only, you know, the history of your life, right? You know,
what you've smelled, what you've tasted,
right?
Around your parents, your grandparents.
Yeah, other people haven't tasted my
table.
grandmother's strudel, but I had a wine tasting note once that said strawberry strudel sitting on a saddle.
That's interesting.
You love saddles. Huh?
I do love saddles.
Yeah, and you do. I mean, like when you start to tie that together, like with some of the maybe like this, like that leather, there's that dryness, maybe even a little bit of a tobacco, you know, to it, something like that, with that like rootiness, that like root beer, you know, black licorice. It's a very good and very mouth coating rye whiskey too. That's one nice thing about it.
We always love that mouth coating.
Yeah.
Wine or with bourbon, rye or whiskeys. If it coats my mouth, it's thick. It's, you know, it's got the, you know, viscosity to it.
Yeah.
And then I know we've got something there that's tasty and it'll hang around.
Yeah.
With a higher note like this has a great finish to it.
Yeah, it's very good. Well, while we're still tasting these, so Joseph asked before, has your bourbon business impacted your wine business at all?
Well, you know, I think people, you know, for years we never talked about the wine business. We were just going to be bourbon people here in Kentucky.
That was just Kentucky.
Yeah, so we never really talked. You know, people knew that maybe we had a winery or whatever, and, you know, but we finally have started talking a little bit more about the wines, and you know, hopefully, you know, we will have wines in Kentucky one of these days. You know, I think a lot of my friends that are bourbon drinkers love our wine too now, and so they're drinking the bourbon and the wine. So I think it's impacted in a good way. You know, I think we're cross promoting both of them, but without doing very much of that.
The wine is really small too, and so we haven't had enough wine to distribute in the scent, like especially here in Kentucky.
We make about 2,000 cases of Carter Cellars, which is our very high-end brand, and we're very fortunate. You know, I don't know if everyone knows, but you probably know, Scott. But we actually, Robert Parker, one of the big critics, and it's like 9 100-point wines.
Yeah.
So we're one of the few people that really have that many 100-point wines, and that's about great vineyards and blending and great winemaking. Again, you want to do everything as perfectly as you can and to achieve making something.
Strive for excellence.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's and that's what we wanted to do, and we'll continue to strive for with our bourbon, rye and whiskey.
Yeah. Well, it kind of boils, down to, or goes back to your passion for whatever it is that you're producing. You want it to be the best of the best.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to do something.
Do it right.
Or just
we had one of the guys put in here, oh my God, the root beer notes is crazy. I can't get it out of my head. So he must be sipping on some of it as well. So
great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I know Christopher David before. He's in Pennsylvania, and he somehow got his hands on 4 and 5 already of the Rise. So
he must have went down to the Middle Atlantic.
He could have. He could have easily. So, all right. So let's move on to. Let me take a sip of water here. We'll move on to the batch 6. Yeah.
I've got a question, Scott. Brian.
Yeah.
I see Brian Todd's question says, do you run into a taste you can't figure out? Is that for us?
Yeah, that's for you. And I meant to actually ask that. I've got it on here that I was going to ask you that. So yeah, what do you do when you run into something where you're struggling?
I think that's a really great question, because there's a very interesting flavor that we get sometimes, especially in the single barrels. And it's the savory barrels. So it's barrels that have almost they've got this very unique, clearly the sweetness is very subtle. And it's just this, like, they're good and complicated, but they are like, what is that? What is that? What is that? And sometimes all I can come up with is
savory
soy sauce. And in a really good way, like in a, there's fattiness to it, but there's this just like, and those are some of the most unique barrels. And so we've played around, and they've been difficult barrels sometimes to blend. They aren't great blenders.
And they're not really great by themselves.
Sometimes they can be. And I like to root for the underdog sometimes more I think more than Mark does. But so some of those I'm just like, it's so complex, I can't let it go.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm glad Brian asked that question, because I'm sure everybody who does any blending probably runs into that at times, where what in the world is this that I'm tasting, and what am I going to do with this? Yeah. So that's a very, very good question. So
there are sweet barrels, there are fruit driven barrels, and then there are savory barrels.
Yeah.
And
which is probably the fun part for you, being able to go through all those and figure out all those combinations and all of that. It's a very interesting and fun thing to to kind of be able to play around with and figure out what that is. So let me ask you this. So when you're doing the blending, like, what is it that makes you decide that this is the blend? Like, I can't imagine that you necessarily go in with an idea of what it is. You maybe just know when you taste it, like, this is it.
That is it. You just go and you start trying things, and you try to keep improving on it, making it better and better. And you say, oh my goodness. And finally, it will hit you, and you go, oh, that's it.
And for me, if we get there and we land on something and we fall in love with it, that's great. But then I'll go back through and try another dozen or two blends that are the core blend, but I'll swap out. I'll do this or that, or I'll just mess with it a little bit. And as long as everything I blend after that, I don't love more, or we don't love more, because I don't. Sometimes he's like, "This is excruciating."
I said, I think you would hit it as soon as I
he's
get
like,
that.
I'm good. I love it.
the hair on the back of my neck raises up and stuff, and I get a chill. I said, I don't know if we're going to do much better than this.
But my theory is you don't know what you don't know until you know. And
well, that's probably the perfectionist coming out in Sherri, is that there's if you don't taste something one more time, you don't know if the next time is the best time.
Yes.
Which I mean can be and I'm not necessarily agreeing with that. I'm just saying that that's the perception of like the not knowing. Like if I don't taste this one or two more times, is that next taste or the second taste, is that the best one? Which probably can drive you crazy at times, But I mean, again, it goes back to the passion and you wanting the best of whatever it is. So you can't fault anybody for that. So
it's got to be.
Hey, a girl's got to do what a girl's got to do.
That's it. I'm not going to disagree with that. I won't disagree with that. So, all right. So I've moved on to batch 6 of the rye, and for me, right, this, like we said before we went live, for me, this is just much more of that spearmint note, the sweeter, like fresh rye that's there for me on this one.
This is much higher profile.
What about a green apple aspect? Do you get any type of like a green apple to it?
For sure. Yep. This is bright fruit.
Mm-hmm.
This is, the thing that got me with this rye is the crazy, there's a wood note to it, but it's in the cedar family. So I get a ton of cedar on the nose and in the palate.
Yeah, instead
of the deep, dark, creamy, rich oak, I get this more towards, the cedar box, cedar closet. Like,
what's funny about that? It's really odd. On here, I have written down sawdust.
Yeah,
there you go.
I don't know why that is. And that's not something I get very often. But it's this like sawdust kind of note to it. And I guess that could be whatever that wood definition is. So,
yeah.
So Caskin still says this is a fantastic insight into the world of Old Carter. Love it.
Oh, hey, Christopher David, batch 5 over rice.
Oh yeah, what does Christopher say? So he's got
batch 5 over the.
Oh, he's got he's got 5 over 6. Okay.
No, we love to the ryes are, one is mine and one is Mars. We're not going to tell you which one's which.
And this has been going on for 3 batches.
Yeah.
1 and 2.
Yeah.
3 and 4, and 5 and 6.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, I guess if I had to like choose which one I thought, I would say 5 is Sherri and 6 is Mark.
Oh, well, that's one guess.
We can't give it away.
Oh, okay. We can't give it away. Okay. That's okay. All right. Okay. That's true. Cause not anybody else other than a couple people have been able to experience this one yet. So
I have part 2 of this in 3 weeks.
Okay. All right. Interesting. I'll have to look for it. Cause I'm going to be in Kentucky the 2nd week in June. I'll have to start looking. Will it be out by then?
When you come? Yes.
Start calling the local, liquor stores and getting a bottle reserved. That's a good idea, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking forward to, I mean, I like both of them just for different reasons. And that's the one good part. And like, sometimes I'll get like just doing reviews of, people will want to kind of argue with, I don't taste that, or this isn't good or whatever. And I always say to people, I said, what we do or anybody does is very subjective. And nobody is ever wrong. Whatever you smell and taste is what it is.
You're absolutely correct, Scott.
I used to get so crazy about the wine world and the and tastings in the wine world, and I it would make me nuts. It's like, as an artist, this is subjective. This is art. Nobody has the same palate. Nobody loves the same thing, and that's okay. Everybody doesn't have to agree, and that's the beauty of it. That's called the conversation.
Yeah. And one of the things that's been really interesting, though, even though Sherri likes one and I like another one, we send them out to market and we do the research and we ask everybody which ones they like. It ends up being about 50-50 on both of them.
Which is how the whole thing started in the first place, doing two.
That was one of the things I always remembered. It was always the competition of which one is mine and which one is somebody else's. So it's always a fun thing to kind of hear that battle. So, you know,
and we can do a real short version of the whole like origin of that. Rye was the very first thing we were going to put out.
Mm-hmm.
And we had blended 2 batches, and we both loved both of them, but I loved one more and he loved one more.
We couldn't make a decision.
And they were very different. Rye 1 and 2.
And we went around and asked everybody, which one you like? And it ran 50-50. So it wasn't really helping us at all at that point.
No.
But then one of our good friends finally said to us, as we showed it to him, he said, "You want the good news or the bad news?" And I said, "Geez, I like good news." He said, "Well, the good news is they're both great. Can you put them both out?"
The good news is there is no
bad news.
Yeah, that's good. That's very true. Very true. That's very true. So, and they are. They're both fantastic, just in different ways. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, again, there is no good or bad. They're just different.
And
you know?
I think that's what's exciting about the whole business.
Yep.
Yes.
Well, and that's the best part. That's one of the best parts about whiskey is that when you're sitting down and you had these 2 bottles and you had 10 people in there and 5 like 5 and 5 like 6, I mean, you could have that conversation all night long and everyone tried to prove their point. But at the end of the day, you're still enjoying good whiskey and good conversation, you know, so.
Yes. And that's the beauty of this business.
Yeah. And I mean, I think people will really be like very happy with 5 and 6 of the Ryes. They're both fantastic just in their own like different ways. And for me, I mean, so far, like if I was choosing of what I like, I mean, I love like batch 5 of the bourbon. I love that big boldness. And I like them a little bit more. Before we went live, I thought I liked 5 more than 6, but I've kind of switched a little bit. I think I like the complexity of 6 a little bit more. So and again, maybe tomorrow I'll like 5 and 6. I mean, which is possible, you know.
It happen that way sometimes, Scott.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So maybe or maybe not. We've saved the best for last. Maybe that's subjective again. But for me, I love the American whiskeys. I love what you guys do with them. It's a tremendous whiskey. So before we kind of get into that, is batch 3 of the American whiskey already released?
Yes.
Yeah, it went out with the bourbons.
Yeah,
it did. Okay.
It was released in Kentucky, although there's been a little bit of a mini second wave on it.
Yeah, they tried to hold some back. They
held some back
for the on-premise, the restaurants and things like that.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of a kind of a second resurgence of it here in Kentucky.
Okay. And I know if people are looking like specifically like in Kentucky, I think Justin's House of Bourbon has your stuff all the time, right? Most of the time.
They definitely did it on release.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So here we go. Batch 3 of the American whiskey. And again, this is non-chill filtered, all of that good stuff. There's nothing taken out, nothing put in. This is coming in at 138.1 proof. This is again batch 3 of their American whiskey.
This is what you've done now.
It is, and actually, I've got in a couple weeks, either 2 or probably 3 weeks, myself and another guy who has another YouTube channel, we're gonna do kind of a blind flight of all the American whiskeys to see which one we choose, which one we like more, and why, and all that. So that'll be a really fun and interesting blind to go through all 3 of those.
When's that gonna happen? I'd love to watch that.
I think it's going to be probably when I come back the following Tuesday, when I come back from Kentucky, which will be like the 3rd week in June. So whatever that 3rd week, it'll be a Tuesday night, and I'll let you know if we run into each other when we're there. I'll let you know.
That'd be great.
Fun.
That'd be great.
I don't think we've done 1, 2, or 3 together.
No.
Oh, this batch 3 is just brown sugars and that dark, heavy fruits and that
Another high corn mash bill, tough to beat.
This to me, I know it's funny. We've always released the Americans late in the year, so they're coming in at Christmas time and that fall season, and it's all about the warming, spicy. I mean, this is all of that, and right now it's making me really nostalgic for the fall time.
For Christmas.
Yeah. You know what else I get with this, and one other thing that I got with the batch, batch 1 is this, and it's been very consistent, is this almost like a baked apple pie, where you get that spicy, baking spice and all of that, what you smell in the air. It's so much like that.
Apple pie, cinnamon, and
Yeah.
So, and the crust.
Yeah.
That beautiful pastry.
But really
well
baked crust.
Bakery
That
shop.
golden brown.
Yeah.
Brown.
It's very that's one thing I always try to describe these bold whiskeys like this is rich, and it's almost before when a fruit that's already sweet starts to kind of turn and that sweetness comes out in it. You always get that, I always get this bold, rich sweetness to these kind of whiskeys like this. So
I agree. I agree.
You can't get much sweeter than this.
It is sweet. It is. No. It is sweet.
Yeah.
But
American whiskey.
Yeah.
There's the American whiskey.
I love it.
It really is. So I mean, it's absolutely. I mean, just the nose. I mean, this is one of those whiskeys. I haven't even tasted it for over an hour and a half now, and smelling it, I could just smell the thing all night long.
And that that's good sipping whiskey.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's about.
Amen.
Yeah. To enjoy and think and just relax.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
It's
hand sanitizer because it's 139 proof.
That's true. I wouldn't want to. I would take my chances on getting the what rather than wash my hands with this. Okay.
But it smells.
I'm not. This isn't going anywhere except in my mouth. I can tell you that right now. So
any germs that going into your body.
Yeah, I would be if I had that kind of money that I could use this as hand sanitizer, I'd be all over that. But this is, I mean, so for you guys out there who are looking for big and bold and rich and spicy and all of that, everything that you look for in a big barrel proof whiskey that at the same time doesn't have nearly the heat that some other things have had that are drinking like this, because there's not very often we get almost 140 proof and not get much heat or burn on it. This is an absolutely incredible whiskey. So if you're wondering about it, anybody, or reluctant to pull the trigger, I mean, don't even. Yeah, I mean, someone put Stag Junior, and again, that stuff drinks hot. At times, it can be like gasoline, And again, this, like John Belushi says, you can't. Yeah, I mean, some of these things are crazy with some of the heat on them. So, but absolutely fantastic, absolutely fantastic. You almost get a little bit of a that old kind of dusty type of characteristic a little bit to it, the old kind of dusty whiskeys or something, maybe from the 80s, and maybe that just comes from the high corn a little bit on it.
Good. Yeah.
Well,
it's like a maple bomb.
So with that being said, so I guess why don't you, so what kind of where we're at with things now, what does the future hold for the Old Carter brand, and what do you guys kind of have coming down the pipeline a little bit that you're maybe willing to share with everybody?
Crystal ball.
Just reaching for the crystal ball. There it is.
Okay, the crystal ball. Yeah. What is it saying?
That come back later.
Come back later.
No, I'm
Yeah.
kidding. It's a good question.
Well,
we know a couple things.
Then we're looking to put some single barrel Kentucky stuff.
Let's actually tell them what you've been doing every day.
Okay. You
'Cause
go ahead.
That's concrete.
Yeah.
So no, you go ahead. It's your jam.
Well, yeah, I've been building doors and windows for the little place over here around the corner. We're right in Louisville right now, and on First and Market, we're getting closer and closer to having our little shop at 105 Market Street.
West Market.
And it's sheetrock.
We're 1 block off Whiskey Row in downtown.
Yeah. And it's going to be a little appointment only place because, you know, if we're around, we'll do tastings with our friends and people that we know that love what we do. And it's not going to be open all the time because there's just the two of us making this all happen. So, you know, it'll be fun to have that happening, and we'll be able to do some other things there and, you know, have people come and see us. So I've been doing these doors and windows for about 2 weeks. And it takes me back to my, you know, when I started out which is a carpenter, you know, and eating a little sawdust. It's been fun. So that's what I've been doing. But
yes, so that's I guess you could say you know, brick and mortar, and we've never had a place of our own. So this is exciting. Of course, we have our little speakeasy at Justin's House of Bourbon in Lexington. But this is going to actually be our own little space.
Yeah.
And that'll be very cool. So it's been exciting knowing that Mark is actually the guy that's building the actual structure.
And so far, no fingers have left it. He was very young.
It's the problem before.
That happened when I was 18, so that was a long time ago.
So yay for keeping all our digits. And as far as the future goes, we are actually trying to bottle our single barrels while we're here right now.
Yeah.
So that's why we're tasting through everything. And it looks like our next bottling is going to be in August, which is our regularly scheduled time. And then we're going to have a couple more bourbons out this fall. The single barrels, probably another American, and who knows what else. We might have a little surprise for you guys that we don't.
Very, very interesting. I was always waiting for the little surprise. Like, are we going to start to get into maybe like a finished whiskey or something along those lines, or
And you know, we're real traditional when it comes to, and that's what we love, American oak. You know, we've done everything with American oak. I would love to do something someday with a French barrel. Not a wine barrel, really.
Yeah, we really are not. We're not drawn to finishing in wine barrels.
Yeah. You know, I have some great wine barrels.
Yeah.
We're not ruling anything out.
Yeah.
If somebody wants one, maybe I do.
But we're not making plans either. So
well, what about the idea? And I guess this could be either a charity related thing or something along those lines. But with what you guys do, what about the ability for people to maybe down the road choose a barrel or you know, maybe begin to kind of slowly get into any kind of like having groups or something, maybe choose a barrel or something? Is that a possibility?
Yes. And so what we're waiting for that is for our own new make to come on board.
Okay.
So I don't know if it makes, you know, to buy sourced barrels, we do what we do with it and blend, and we love that. But that's somebody else's product. And so to call that an Old Carter single barrel pick, you know, it's different, right? So I think it's going to be exciting when we have the juice that's coming out of Kentucky. It's going to be Kentucky straight bourbon. And then I think it's going to be the time, or rye.
Or rye. Okay.
And then, we do. And then, you know, we can play around with stuff like that.
So will the idea actually to have not only your own distillate, but to still continue to source at the same time, or will one transition into the other?
We love sourcing.
Yeah.
so much fun stuff.
I think
to
we'll
work
always
with.
do that. You know, I know a lot of people have shifted that
Yeah.
started with, you know, source whiskeys, and then they got their own still put up, and then they basically only have their own, you know, juice.
Yeah.
You know,
Which is great.
it's wonderful. But, you know, gosh, when you can find great, you know, beautiful barrels,
Yeah.
and, you know, if you nurture, I think, you know, relationships with people, you know, it'll be, I think just the more,
there's room for both.
I think there's
Yeah.
room for both,
And
and we enjoy both. And
Yes.
I don't know if I'd ever want to give up that, you know?
You know, and that's interesting because, like you said, you know, so many companies do that where they've built their reputation on sourced, and then it's all gone, and now they're relying on just their own distillate, and it's completely different. Now they're like on a different path, and I do like the idea that you're gonna, you know, possibly stick with still some of the source, and this is what we kind of, you know, our bread and butter, so to speak, and now we've got our own distillate, and it's different, which it will be. And that's still good at the end of the day. I mean, it doesn't mean that it's bad. It's just different. So
it's going to be really fun and really interesting.
Yeah.
And now we're coming up on next year, you know, this stuff's going to turn 4.
Yeah.
And it's just been a blast. But I feel like as long as there are quality barrels to still source, we will absolutely keep sourcing barrels.
And you know, I never wanted to get cut short. That's why we started distilling, because somebody might say, oh, well, we're not going to sell to you anymore.
Yeah.
So we got our own stuff. You know?
Is there kind of an approximation of like when you're kind of, I know, like, you know, without knowing when the stuff's ready, is there an idea of like when you are trying to shoot for kind of having your own stuff released a little bit?
Well,
it won't be before 6-7 years.
At 6, you know, we like, you know, you tasted some 7-year-old product that, you know, we bought and we aged for 3 years.
Yeah.
And so that, you know, to us seems, you know, but if it speaks and it's really good at 6.
Yeah.
And
we have several different kinds of distillate aging. So I'm sure it's not all going to come to maturity at the same time.
And, and the rise may be earlier.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I mean, it's interesting and exciting all at the same time that people are going to actually get quite a bit, like a big offering from you, you know? So that's really nice. So
thank you, Scott. Thank you.
All right. Well, we're almost an hour and a half in. I've gone way over your time. So I know you guys have more social distancing to get to because Sherri can't get enough of Mark. So you guys have some social distancing to get to tonight.
Mark for another couple of
Yeah. Poor Mark is like, let's keep this thing going. Let's stretch it on out a little bit. So no, I guess I just want to say thank you so much for taking a little bit of time and just letting everybody know a little bit more about you guys, the brand, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, I knew that a lot of people, you know, whether they're watching tonight or down the road when they watch the replay, will really get a good perspective of you guys, your personalities, the brand, what's behind it all. And for me, that's important. I think when people can relate to all of that, it makes the sipping or the drinking of the whiskey that much more special, you know. So thanks.
We really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us tonight.
Yeah. And everybody else that's been watching.
And everybody else.
Thank you.
And you guys are the reason we do it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we thank you for all that. So before we get off, why don't you guys just tell everybody maybe where they can find you, all your social media stuff, like where they can find your whiskeys and all of that.
Okay. So, of course, we're very active on Instagram. We're at Old Carter Whiskey Co. is our handle. And so I really try to keep everybody informed of things there. Also, we have a newsletter that I do about quarterly, which kind of coincides with our happenings. And you can pick up the newsletter subscription by going to our website, which is oldcarterwhiskeyco.com. And just click on the contact us or the mailing list link. I think it is actually. Not so active on Facebook. I only have so much time in the day.
Yeah.
But definitely Insta. And also, I'm Sherri at oldcarterwhiskeyco.com. And you guys can always get me. I pick up a lot of direct messages there and emails. And so, we try to stay in communication with everybody that reaches out. And we will keep people informed of when the new space will be opening. I've had a lot of questions about that. And I think people are starting to dream up their next bourbon journey.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. There you go. Just get me back. Get me back.
Amen. Amen. So thank you very much, Scott. And we really appreciate the time and hanging out with you and drinking whiskey.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And thanks everybody for joining tonight and everybody who will watch the replay. I hope you get as much, out of it then as we all did tonight. It was a lot of fun. And I think everybody got a lot of really, really good information. So with that being said, again, Mark and Sherri, thank you so much for joining tonight. Everybody in the chat and watching it later on, thank you so much for tuning in. And we'll hopefully see you next Tuesday night on another live stream. So thanks everybody and cheers.
Yeah. Thank you, Bourbon Journey. Thanks, Scott.